Hello, I am Remo Yes Man, and today I would like to talk about Sony again because it seems like Sony just keeps dropping the ball. I swear at least once a month Sony is hitting its consumer base with L after L after L though. So, what happened this time, you might be wondering? Well, we all know Sony for the PlayStation and its gaming service, but in addition to the PlayStation, on the PlayStation ecosystem, Sony actually hosts other services. Sony hosts streaming services, as well as Sony hosts a service that allows you to purchase digital movies. Now, Sony's been in the game for a while. Sony's been doing this since I believe the PS3 era. I remember you being able to purchase movies on the PS3 era. And one would assume that once you purchase one of these movies, it's yours to keep for good, right? Well, that's not necessarily the case, because what a lot of people don't realize is oftentimes when you buy something digitally, what you're actually purchasing is a license. Now, the licensing agreement you get when you purchase a digital product usually allows you to use that digital product as many times as you would like, assuming the overarching company that made the initial licensing agreement is still in business or the agreement still stands. Well, a few days ago, PlayStation customers got a message from Sony saying, "Dear customers, as of December 31st, 2023, due to our content licensing agreement with content providers, you will no longer be able to watch your previously purchased Discovery content, and the content will be removed from your video library." So what this basically means is, although you purchased this product, you will no longer be able to use it anymore. And from what I heard, you'll still have the product, but the product just won't be usable. It'll basically be a glorified digital paperweight. But yeah, this is the message that a lot of Sony users woke up to. Now, the even more insidious part of this is Sony had previously put out a statement stating how they're shifting their business model away from TV and movie purchases. And as of August 31st, 2021, you will no longer be able to make movie and TV purchases in our rentals through the PlayStation Store anymore. But they explicitly stated that users could still access movie and TV content they had previously purchased. Well, how times have changed, because it looks like Sony is walking that back with at least the Discovery section of their arrangement. Shows like Mythbusters and Naked Afraid, as well as other Discovery content, will no longer be available to users that previously purchased them. And furthermore, this actually isn't the first time Sony has done some shit like this. Sony has previously done something like this where they removed hundreds of titles that people had already paid for, but it specifically only affected Austria and Germany, and I believe maybe a few other regions. And as a result of that, there wasn't as big of an outcry about it. Back then, a lot of users lost access to stuff like Hunger Games, Paddington, John Wick, Chicken Run, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we should fear an all-digital future. We just talked about the lawsuit that Sony has against them for overcharging consumers for digital goods, and Sony is absolutely guilty of that. And all of these companies want to abolish physical media, because once they abolish physical media, they can basically make the rules when it comes to their own platform. And I get it, right? Motherfuckers don't want to just make a lot of money, they want to make all of the money, right? But it's not necessarily pro-consumer. Sony is literally removing stuff that people have already paid for, and I haven't heard anything about any refunds being dished out. And if you dealt with Sony before, you know what a pain in the ass it could be to get a refund from Sony. But I guarantee that somewhere in the terms and conditions in the licensing agreement, there was probably some context that stated that something like this could happen to prevent any legal ramifications from befalling Sony. I guarantee Sony covered their ass, so like I guarantee Sony's covered. And listen, this is why we should be championing physical releases of video games. I myself usually only buy a physical copy of a video game, and I believe that when you buy a physical copy, the disc should absolutely have the fucking game on it. You shouldn't just buy a physical copy and get a glorified data disc. Oftentimes nowadays, you see too often when you buy a PlayStation or Xbox title, there's a good chance that it doesn't actually contain the goddamn game and it's just a glorified data disc. And that's absolutely ridiculous, and it's something we should all speak out against. For all the shit that people talk about Nintendo, one thing is for damn sure, when you buy a Nintendo game, the game will always be on the cartridge. And lastly, the way we just seen Sony remove digital goods from a user's console without their consent, the same exact thing could happen to Warframe or any other live service game and all the digital goods that you own inside that game. And look, I know Warframe is not a live service game in the traditional sense of the word, but it's still an MMO type game. And if DE ever goes belly up for one reason or another, all those hundreds of thousands of hours that you spent in Warframe, all that time you have invested, all that digital gear you have, that shit's just gone. That shit's poof. It doesn't exist anymore. And I've seen it happen before. It's a pretty common thing actually when dealing with online games or MMOs or any live service games in general. You know, if the company or game goes belly up, oftentimes all those digital goods are just gone. So remember, when you're dealing with digital goods, oftentimes your digital items usually rely on a licensing agreement, or it relies on the company to maintain its current posture. And most of the time that won't be a problem because these companies are way too big to fail or to go under. But if there is any type of tomfoolery with the licensing agreement, it can result in the loss of a bunch of digital items, a bunch of digital goods. And one prime example is, look what happened to Blizzard when they terminated their deal with NetEase, right? You have a fuck ton of Chinese players that were huge in Blizzard games that invested God knows how much money, and they can't even access their account. It's like all those digital goods, all those thousands of dollars that they invested in their account, it's just gone, you know? So until Blizzard gets some kind of new deal where they can re-enter the Chinese market, all those digital goods that those Chinese players had purchased through Blizzard in the BattleNet or whatever the fuck, that shit's just gone, and I doubt they got a refund for it either. And personally, guys, this is why I've never been against piracy, right? And to be perfectly honest with you guys, I've actually only pirated movies and music. I've never actually pirated a video game. I guess that's because for the amount of engagement that I get out of a good video game, I feel like the product is actually worth my money. Whereas when you look at the music industry and you look at the movie industry, they're all a bunch of corrupt billionaire elite fucks. So I don't mind pirating from those guys. And look, if you're not into that shit, I'm not telling you to go around pirating shit. But what I am saying is, if it was some shit that I already paid for and Sony removed it from my library, I wouldn't feel bad about pirating it. Anyway, guys, that's all from me. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far, I greatly appreciate it. Now, the best thing you can do for me is just to have a beautiful day. Peace.
When needed, extraction is ready.